Going to spend some time today with the Vermont Forest Products Association. Always good to hear what they're up to. Very active in the building, very active within the community, very active within the state. So I would give you guys kudos for always letting your voices be heard. So who wants to lead off?
I can start.
Okay, so
Morning.
morning.
So good to see everyone. Gwen Zakoff for the record. I'm the lobbyist for the Vermont Forest Products Association. As you know, forestry is not in this committee. We think it should be. So whoever needs me to lobby for that, for the rules committee, that would be fantastic. So the Vermont Forest Products is an association that's been around since 1977. We represent a large array of different businesses and individuals that work in and outside the woods and work with wood. We have around 200 members right now between individuals and businesses. We represent loggers, foresters, truckers, sawmills, manufacturing facilities, biomass processors and generators, wood processors, firewood processors, landowners, equipment dealers, and excavators. So pretty much everything in the life cycle of dealing with wood is our purview. And our mission is to educate, do outreach, public outreach, education, to build, coalitions between different organizations, stakeholders, working well with state and federal agencies, and lobbying, well, so advocacy in this building. So we have a board of directors. We have several board of directors sitting behind me. We're all directors behind me. And so we produce, newsletters, 4 times a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. I provide weekly legislative reports to our membership. Today is obviously our VFPA day in the State House. Various industry awards, one of which there will be a resolution read on the House floor for Tucker Riggs, who I believe testified in your committee for earlier in the session. And he runs a sawmill, and so he won the 2024 Outstanding Sawmill Operator of the Year. So we're having a resolution read. And anyone up north, we're doing our Northern Regional Roundup next weekend, next Saturday at Eastside Restaurant in Newport. Free. Come join us. Free breakfast.
I have it on my schedule. Yes. Yeah.
So we host those for our members. We do one up north and then we do one down south. And we work closely with a lot of the tech schools that have programming that's, within our purview. And I think that pretty much sums it up. So there's a few things that we're still working on. There hasn't been any proactive legislation this year because there's been a lot of things happening in previous years that we're sort of dealing with. I think the biggest two that we're following and focusing on are the 30 by 30, 50 by 50 requirements that were put into play, and really pressing right now because the LURB, the new Land Use Review Board, is sort of now up and running, is weighing in on the new Act 250 adjustments that are going to be coming our way over the next several years. So we have a lot at stake if things don't go the way we want them to, especially with regards to Tier 3, how that gets mapped, and our ability to access parts of land that are at certain elevations, higher elevations, how that's going to play into the new road rule, and various other things. We had some timber trespass bills that came through last year, and so we're watching those play out. Might have legislation next year, depending on how those things work through. And I think the overall issue that, and everyone can kind of speak to it on their own, that we always focus on is making sure that there's right size regulations for the work that our industry does. I've always found it kind of interesting that there's not more parity between agriculture and forestry, because we're both dealing with working lands, and it's a high value enterprise that we see in the States, and agriculture by and large is exempt from a lot of the regulatory schemes that forestry just doesn't enjoy. And so it puts them in situations similar to like what we were just talking about, Act 250, and other regulatory schemes where that is unheard of in the agricultural world, and it really puts a lot of burden on the industry, and that's why you're seeing sawmills and operators sort of phasing out, and once they're gone, they never come back. So I kind of look at our industry as sort of an endangered species that you have to protect at all measures. So I have 4 board members behind me. I don't know how you want to, I just want to do this intro, and if you want to ask any questions of folks,
Absolutely.
if you want to, do you want to sit at the table? Maybe we'll start with Chris. Do you want to sit up and talk about your?
Absolutely, please.
Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Chris Fife. I'm Public Affairs Manager for Weyerhaeuser. I'm a forester licensed in Vermont and Maine. I actually live in Maine. I have been before this committee before, not this year. So it's good to be here and to be here in a situation where we can just share a little bit about our industry and kind of celebrate what we bring to the state that I think we all really appreciate. So Weyerhaeuser has 86,000 acres of timberland in Vermont. We manage it's less and less being called this, but the former champion lands up in the Northeast Kingdom. It's part of a larger landscape that includes our working forest, our working forest conservation easement, the state lands, and the federal refuge up there. So those, our lands are really the working forest piece of that ownership. 86,000 acres. We harvest, on average across all of our timberlands, about 2% of our land every year. So every year we're actively managing, actively harvesting, have anywhere from 4 to 6 contractors, logging contractors working on our property on a pretty much regular basis. Of course, not right now, we're in mud season. This will last for a little while into June anyway. We do have one contractor who's actually cutting wood right now, when we can on our property up there. He's a Catholic contractor, so they have a lot lighter footprint. They can work at times of year when others can't, but no hauling of wood at this time of year. Gwen has been doing a great job down here, kind of being a voice for us on the issues that we're concerned about. She mentioned Act 250. For Weyerhaeuser and other timberland owners who are really wanting to manage their timberland, and especially with that scale of acreage, Act 250 and the jurisdictional boundaries of that are really important. I mentioned to one earlier that we were talking about the land above 2,500 feet. Weyerhaeuser went through a process, has been through more than once now, getting a permit to be able to harvest above 2,500 feet. I would welcome any of you to come and go in the woods with me, with our foresters sometime. What you would see if you drove our roads and drove up about 2,500 feet is that you don't know you just crossed to 2,500 feet. In fact, in many cases, the land might be more easily managed above 2,500 feet than below, as far as topography and terrain and all of that. So we recognize some of those values of headwater streams and things that, are unique to high elevation. But having that in the jurisdiction of Act 250 just adds a layer. We took 2 years to get a permit to harvest about a 200-acre area. And when all was said and done, we could harvest, I believe we ended up with not even a third of the area that we were actually allowed to operate in. We're under a conservation easement. It's no development. It's just timber management. So, my example was, this is like telling a farmer, when you get within 300 feet of the river, you can't chop your corn unless you go get an Act 250 permit to do that, even though they're maintaining that as ag land. And we know all the benefits of those forests, especially managed forests, no matter where they are in the landscape, provide, as far as clean water, wildlife habitat, all those things. So, I have a personal desire to see, as we go through the Act 250 process, that issue raised and us try to get some recognition around forestry as exempt in those. Not saying there doesn't need to be a special process, but anyway, there's more detail there, and Forest and Parks is on board with that as well. So, the other issue I wanted to mention that's important to us, and you hear a lot about this, and it's not directly in your committee, I'm sure, but housing and workforce are huge for us. And I can talk about it operating above 2,500 feet, but frankly, if we have no loggers, it really doesn't matter. You can give us free rein to do anything we want anywhere. If we have no one to cut the wood, we're not going to do anything, and our industry will collapse. And we've been really facing, as Glenn said, a lot of people phasing out. They're just at that stage where they're retiring and no one's coming in. They're just selling their equipment and it's gone. Or they maybe are trying to attract new employees, but the employees can't find housing. We're in rural areas. We're up in Northeast Kingdom. You think housing's cheap up there, but the housing stock that's up there in many cases is not really high quality. It's old. It has issues. I mean, this is we need to address those issues for our industry as well, and it's even more so if you get mills of any scale that are starting to process what we need to have employees. And so we're really active in trying to help think through that process and how can we make our communities vibrant rural communities and keep what's unique about them, but make them attractive. So working with places like Island Pond is really central to our ownership. And what's important, what's going to attract people there that maybe then attracts new operators that want to work in the woods, that have those skills. And then, as Gwen also mentioned, working with like the tech centers and trying to be in the schools and just educate about there are careers. There's things you could do. If you like being in the woods, you can make a career of it. So those are really important for us as well. So I'm going to stop there. Probably already taking too much of your time.
Well, we go ahead, Ron.
So, Chris, where does most of the wood go after harvest up to Canada?
For us, it really is spread around a lot of different mills. We have many customers. Our pulpwood goes back to Maine.
Okay.
As you know, there's no pulp mills in Vermont, and a lot of the lower grade wood that's cut in that part of Vermont goes to Sappi in Maine. They buy primarily hardwood pulp. And then our hardwood logs go to a number of different customers, both generally in Maine, Quebec. I don't think anything goes to New Hampshire. We've had some mills that buy in Vermont. Of course, we have the veneer mill up in Newport. So Columbia's right there in Newport. They're an important mill for our industry. And then some things like tie logs or mat logs. It's just been, it's a struggle right now in mills, and we've seen a lot drop out, especially in that area of the state. So for us with transportation, we're actually closer to some of those other areas, but that's where we tend to go with it.
It seems like there's a lot of frustration. We send it up there, it comes back as lumber from Canada with a tariff on it, and all of a sudden it's unaffordable for a lot of people to, especially if you're going to build a new house.
Yeah. We've been fortunate in this tariff realm for now. The things haven't changed from the what is it called now? The
NAFTA agreements.
NAFTA, the follow-up to NAFTA. Because that was already in place, that's still what it's actually is. So we haven't seen the impact yet, but who knows? It seems like every day you just open up the newspaper and see what's going to happen, and then so the just not knowing is actually almost worse. We're in a downtime because of mud season right now, but I think as we start up again and our delivery logs, I was on the Forest Futures Roadmap Committee and sit on the steering committee now. And one of the things that we're doing as a group is really trying to think about how do we address that? How can we get processing in Vermont? It's better for everyone. If you can shorten transportation, you can create that secondary processing. We want to see that. And again, those issues I mentioned before are probably one of the biggest barriers. Like, I'm sure there are businesses that would like to site in Vermont, and there's good places to do it. But they look and they say, who's going to work for us? Where can they live? And then, they're looking at the resource after that. We have a wonderful resource. Vermont is blessed with incredible forests. So I don't really think that part is a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think you sort of answered one of the questions, and obviously getting young people involved in the industry. How deep are you into the CTEs? Really throughout the state? Is there a formal program that you have that can create young bloggers but coming out of the schools?
Thank you for that. That's an excellent question. I'm actually going to let Colleen speak to it a little bit more because she has been involved with some of the tech centers directly in Vermont. For Warehouser, what we've been doing internally, we've been trying to develop a program where we can connect those tech centers with the right resources to make sure they can have the forestry programs in place and think about what is working best for them. I would say we're at the beginning stages of that. We're, all of our employees obviously have full-time jobs.
Sure.
And so, but they have a real heart for trying to see people come into the industry. And so we're trying to figure out how best to use our resources to facilitate that, to maybe get students out to the woods on job shadow, and so that's the type of outreach we're doing with the tech centers, and then using our association involvement, like the Vermont Forest Products Association, to do that, cast that wider net. So then they know, okay, we have this student in the Northeast Kingdom, who's really interested in forestry, and we can put them as a forester and get them in the pickup truck to go up for a day. For many of us, those are the kind of things that were life changing. A day with someone who showed us what was possible and their passion and says, I'm going to do this. This is, I know, so I'm going to follow that path. We just want to create those opportunities for.
That's great. If just one more, thank you. The now I forgot what I was going to say.
Come back to it.
I'm deep into AARP, so you don't need to.
So what is the 5-10 year outlook for the logging industry? Down our way, we lost Lathrop's years ago. They just do clearing now. We just lost A. Johnson Company, which was a very vital source. I've seen the small mill that was at Waitsfield closed down. So what is our outlook?
I wish I had that crystal ball. I think that Vermont faces some unique challenges as much as it has some unique opportunities as well, in the regulatory realm and seeing businesses, especially on the Connecticut River Valley side of things, that look at both sides of the river and say their business in New Hampshire because it's easier. But that said, there's a real momentum right now within not just the industry, but I think wider parts of government to try to fix the issue you're identifying, to try to attract wood products businesses. And things like Act 250 are going to be important. I mean, we have to have some really hard conversations about what makes sense, recognizing people's concern for the environment, but also understanding we need to be able to site these facilities somewhere if we want to create the jobs. And what we're seeing, is people are recognizing the value of wood as they think about climate, the storage of carbon in this table right here. So how wood products have long-term storage of carbon and benefit to the environment from that way. And I think that has caused some people to start thinking about active forest management in a more positive light. And then just connecting the dots that have active forest management, use them as something for product, and we can do this in Vermont. So there is a lot of energy towards that. It's a long process, even if someone came in today and said they wanted to site a sawmill, especially a state-of-the-art type of sawmill, you're talking at least 5 years really probably to get that sited, permitted.
That's because of Act 250?
It's probably longer because of Act 250, frankly. But I mean, even anywhere they want to do that, it really just is a long process to invest that money to get something sited and up and running. And So they need assurance that through that process, that's going to be,
Right.
they can see the investment paying off. We have some new products. I know in Maine right now, they're making a wood fiber insulation. That mill is now up and running. That's a direct replacement for fiberglass insulation. Can be used in all the same applications. They have a bat, a board, and a blow-in insulation, all made from cellulose fiber. And so those type of things, I think, are part of the future. It's not just going to be sawing logs into boards. You know, Vermont can do other things, and there's a lot of people that, you know, are attracted to Vermont that have some really interesting ideas about what we could do with our forest products. So that'll be a piece of it too. Is like, we're not quite sure. We need to create the environment that
An
makes
inviting
people
environment.
want to come and try their ideas here.
I did remember. Is there any appetite for any of the mills that you know of, that would invest in housing for potential employees if, say, a state chipped in something?
I guess I don't have a good answer to
Okay.
that specific to.
Because there are some programs I know through the treasurer has a food programs if an entity wants to invest in workforce housing in particular, then that could help. It would, how, you know, housing is just for all industries, something that is unlimited in stock, and if we can help in some way, I think that's something. So that may be a way of at least helping.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, and I have seen that in Maine, with a couple of companies, especially in northern Maine, where it's more remote, and they've gone ahead and built some housing. The other thing we're focused on is childcare, and we've actually seen forced businesses building childcare facilities because that allows us to attract people that otherwise couldn't be as interested.
We're gonna get to everyone, promise. That you're on the hot
And
seat a little
the
bit.
people that are
Yeah.
less market,
Well,
sawmilling issues behind it, especially.
so at some point in time, we'd really like to flesh out what is the barriers of, and we just gotta be honest with all of ourselves so that we know where to go. What the barriers are, why we don't have more mills in the state. I mean, I know for people that have never had a mill in their community, I can think of just West Burke and what it did with West Burke. It was just a city within itself, and it supported everybody, and it even got, somebody that was looking that had 20 acres and looking to make a little bit of extra money, and they'd go and they would harvest some of their timber and they would take it in there and pay their taxes for the years and all of that. And I mean, so it wasn't just industrial type scale logging. It supported communities. It had sawdust. It had stuff. It supplied jobs. All kinds of jobs. It also it made secondary markets better. I mean, I think one of the best talks that I ever heard about harvesting timber was from Simon LaBranch one time, talking about where a tree went. He said, well, I don't take the best log, the best logs go here, and I take the lesser log, and then the tops of the trees go here and it goes there. And so to have those industries within the state, it's certainly it's real industry, but it's from the ground up. It covers everyone. So at some point, Tom would love to hear really what the barriers are of having, whether it's permitting, regulation. We certainly, I like to hear about the new market products coming with the insulation and what might have. But we certainly have a great product here already, as you pointed out. We certainly have the need to build housing. So I think just in itself, having the regular wood product here, we should be able to do something with it. As last time I looked, wood products still haven't really come down in any great way. They're still expensive. So I mean, there just seems to be something that's really kind of holding everything back about what is keeping it from being successful in the state of Vermont when we have all the recipes to make it happen. Yeah, we have some struggles, but at some point in time, just gotta get to where's the rub? How come it's not here when it's in all the other states around us, including another country?
I agree that, and I would be happy to participate in that discussion. I know the next week we'll be talking about the wood processing piece with the Active 50, it's specific to that. So, but it's a bigger discussion and as you're
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And Gwen is gonna lobby to bring, those discussions in this committee, which we would
We
recommend.
would like to do that. Yeah.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Colleen?
Well, I bet you didn't really know what I do for a living. Was not in my high school yearbook. Prophecy of Colin Goodrich owning a mill, but as a farm girl growing up, I guess it's not really too far out of the woods because agriculture and forestry are in the same realm. Goodrich Lumber is located up north in Albany, 30 miles south of the Canadian border. I own the business with my 3 sons. We celebrated 50 years last year, so I started quite young. And we specialize in white cedar lumber. Our raw material is secured within a 75-mile radius of the mill, so mainly Orleans County, Caledonia County, primarily, but 75-mile radius. We deal with probably 70 different loggers and truckers and foresters on a yearly basis, from one-man operations to medium-sized operations to larger companies. So we try to provide that market for anyone that has logs. As you said, Russ, it could be a farmer cutting fence posts and selling larger logs, getting money for his fertilizer or seed. We do provide that market. It doesn't have to be any quality. We do provide a market. Developed a great appreciation for all of the moving parts in forestry, from the landowner growing the tree to the forester making the management plans, the loggers doing the harvesting, the truckers, the mills, primary processors, and secondary processors. So it takes all of us to make it work. And if any of us are not there, then the whole industry suffers. And so it's critical that every person along the line can have a viable business. So I've been part of the Vermont Forest Products Association for many years. And one of the things that I think is a strong point is we do represent all sectors, as Gwen mentioned. And that being said, all of us need to be in the game to be successful, to have a strong forest products industry for many reasons. It's part of our culture and tradition. I mean, many people have had families that have been in this business for generations. An important part of our economy, and the environmental benefits of having healthy forests, from clean air, clean water, wildlife habitat, recreation. Certainly we're playing a major role in climate change, which is a bonus that as we explore climate change, we're one of the best tools in the toolbox. So I think that's a strength of our organization. We do provide education to the public and also within our industry for safety, efficiency, and that type of thing, logger training. And we do work with the schools. We have tech centers throughout the state. Our board of directors, each of the director is paired with the tech center closest to him to be a link between what they're learning in school and the reality of job. We did work with Forest and Parks to get a sub-award for the school coordinator between industry and schools. That's been forever. It was through the Northern Borders Regional Commission, but I think that's still okay. I don't think it's been, but so we're looking forward to signing that agreement and making that relationship even stronger. We're finding that we've probably not done a very good job of promoting the tech programs in our schools, whether it's building trades or forestry or other things, and we're seeing the results of that. Many of the tech programs have a fairly low enrollment. I know North Country is, I think that's 6 students this year. Hazen had a year where they had a dozen students and it went down to 5, and with the financial constraints of education, that program was looked at to be being eliminated. So we've got programs out there. They do a lot of the logger training, first aid, marketing. They're wonderful programs. I'm not sure that they're all promoted as they should through the guidance systems because they don't really have that understanding. And career centers usually you're taken, Lake Region goes to North Country. So they kind of have to make a choice of their time. So we want to strengthen the next generation. On the other hand, we want to make sure that there are viable options that when we promote this and they do something that they love, that there is equitable pay. So we're good on that. I would also say that one of the stumbling blocks is the permitting in Act 250. Act 250, I think, came on board in 1970. Was that we had the 50-year, they had the 50-year gatherings to see how it was doing. And on the table was the pamphlet of protecting the environment and promoting economic prosperity. And I questioned the second part, but we weren't really allowed to speak. We had cards that we had to address. So it was quite something to
It must have been a little tough on you.
It was a little tough because Island Pond, it was a very large gathering. We were there to tell our story. And when we got there, it was structured in such that, but at the end, you could write your question on a card. But they never got to those questions. So when we're talking about loss of infrastructure, any of those family mills that had been grandfathered before 1970, the next generation wanted to keep the mill going. Obviously, you might use new technology. You would probably do the exact same flow as far as wood or the same products, but the minute that you changed your footprint or made changes, then you were in Act 250. And a lot of those families just said it's not viable to go through that. So that kind of was the problem for mills that had been in existence prior to 1970. It is anything that is going to take a lot of time, expense, excess rules and regulations. It's not going to work. I still think we can have a balance between protecting our environment and promoting economic prosperity. But there has to be a lot of willingness to look at the situation over time and make some decisions here. And we're not seeing new mills coming into existence or other things. I don't think you will. It's very easy to go across Connecticut and set up your business. We have more wood growing than what is being used. We've got great opportunities, as Chris said. But we'll both I don't think the realities will blossom until we can get some of these permitting things straightened out. And I don't mean all of this or all of that, I mean a balance. And we just had a salesman come who he deals with New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, and in the last month there were 7 mills that went out in the Northeast, and they're not coming back. They're not changing. So we are an endangered species. Can we be sustained and grow? That is a possibility, but it's going to take some changes. And we have a lot of challenges. We've dealt with them for 50 years with, machines, blah, 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 taxes and whatnot. And we're a pretty hardy breed as far as adapting to the business
Well,
world.
and then on that point, you guys have met Colleen, but through her son, Brian was here testifying. And they went from diesel generators to electricity and actually spent a fair amount of money. And we had to battle a little bit with some folks that didn't really want to contribute much, but we did get them to contribute some. But we had to extend a power line about a mile long to get some three-phase power up there, and you are now all electrified, no more generators there, correct?
Yes, and you know, the boys and I were doing a little succession planning. They said that I probably should be thinking about moving on. I haven't moved yet, but I guess it's probably fine. But I sat the boys down and, you know, all three are there because they want to be, they all do something different. We're similar to many other families and family businesses. And I said, well, 50 years, what are you seeing for the next 5 or 10 years? Do you think we should call it a day and say it's been a good 50 years, or do you want to continue? And they said they wanted to continue. And one of the things was our power problem. And it's expensive. It does have emissions. So we did work with Working Lands and were able to get a grant, but it was substantial, our portion. So, but apparently the younger folks thought we have faith that we're going to continue. So we're happy to be where we are, but no, we need some reform. I think one of the other challenges, and I'll stop and see if you've got any questions, but one of the challenges that we're up against is the lack of understanding of the general public of what we do, why we do what we do, and why is it important. And that's a real challenge, because there seems to be a lot of people, as they moved away from their rural roots, they don't have the understanding that you might have gotten if you grew up on a farm, or you knew that everything had a life cycle, including the cow in the barn. So we are working with that. We've done the documentary, Seeing the Forest for the Trees. We are going to continue sharing our message of why it's important to have a strong forest products industry. And, you know, we'll just hope that we haven't gone too far this way. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think working together, and I think having us in to be at the table when policy is being made, we have a responsibility to come in and share our ideas of what's happening in the forest industry. But we know that if we're not all here, you're not going to bring us all back.
We also met your niece, I believe. You guys might not know this, but we went to the lab. Well, they actually know that we went to the lab, but we went to the lab in Randolph, and your niece was in the invasive species part of it. And so, yeah, so you're ingrained throughout this state.
She grew up on the same farm that I did.
Exactly
So I
right.
think I
And I told her,
father started something pretty good.
and I told her that because I was showing the property on the Backology Road, and the other day it was a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, and I said, you know, I just haven't been by the Doncaster farm and then quite some time, and so I went that way, even though it was still mud season. But I just wanted to just drive by down through there and see that. So yeah, you folks have been in the kingdom for a long time. Hardy bunch.
Oh, yes, so. Any
Yeah.
questions?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Colleen, thanks for coming today. So I represent the Rutland District, and we're in a little bit different situation with our CTEs. The Stafford Technical is oversubscribed. Kids can't get in. It's jam full, and there's no room for anybody else. I'm not sure where Hannaford is, but so we're a little bit different.
Well, we need to
Yeah.
find out what they're doing so we can.
Well, I just want to make everybody aware of something that maybe not on the radar yet. FW Web is sponsoring what's going to be called Bring Back the Trades Expo. It's going to be at Castleton University, or whatever we call it these days. And there's already 33 vendors signed up. So whether you're in the construction trade, plumbing, electrician, it doesn't make any difference. Certainly forestry would work into this. And every student, from what I understand, from the 7th grade through high school, has been invited to attend. It's a full day. Some will even stay over, I'm sure, and continue with it. And the kids will actually be able to work equipment, and it's going to just focus on getting kids as young as seventh grade to start thinking about this. So from what I'm told, there's already 1,600 students committed to coming down. So you could still get involved with it, I'm sure, at this point.
used to do that.
Well, if I wanted more information on that, where would,
You email me and I'll make sure I get it to you.
okay, that'd be
It's
great.
May 20th, by the way, in Castleton.
Okay,
So it's a little bit of a drive.
well, that's a positive.
Yeah.
That's positive. Okay,
Well, thank you, Colleen. And that just for everybody's, we were going to stop at 9:45, but we're gonna extend it for a half an hour. So we're gonna go to 9:15 and we will go longer, but we just have people after you. So we're gonna extend for another half hour. So, and I apologize because we're as much of asking the questions and all of that, but we want to get as much in as we can. So welcome.
Thanks for giving us that a little extra. I'm Ken Gagne, Gagne Lumber down in Pittsford, Vermont, just north of Rutland. Very much a very similar story to Colleen. My great grandfather came down from Quebec in 1880. Worked at Shrewsbury for the railroad, got a chance to buy a farm. That's the farm we're on now, 160 acres, sawmill is part. Long story short, I'm fourth generation. We've had a pretty successful little mill. It's in the scheme of things, not large, but on the other side is pretty commercial. We do a full line of wholesale and retail, pretty much throughout the western central part of Vermont. And we provide a full range of products, right from the finished lumber to the sawdust and chips, the schools. We supplied right now Bennington, both the middle school and the high school, with their fuel chips. So that keeps them warm. 50 trailer loads in a heat. Take one trailer load of our chips, 1,800 gallons fuel. Do the math. Quite a bit of oil.
You're supplying all the chips?
So yeah, we've been running with them.
Oh, you said you were a little mill.
That's relative. Right, so we'll make, yeah, so how you say, I tell people that 25, well, that we were fortunate that my father started the mill in 58. So we had a footprint. And then in 1989, we started the process of building the new mill in the field. Needed Act 250. Act 250 was fairly young, 89. Had some good support. Bill Schildice helped us out. And, I had a pretty good experience getting there. So now we have a 10-acre site, 8 to 10 acre site. And, so we got off a bicycle, got on a motorcycle, and so we've been pretty. My father, very hardworking. Had the work ethic was there. I tried to get away from it for a while. Going back to Castleton, got a chance to go to Castleton, ride the Horizon. So I'm glad to be here. A follow up on the VOTEC. I think one of the wonderful things about Rutland's VOTEC is they've got some great teachers. The young fella who's taken that over, he's just vibrant, and he just does. He's got those kids fly fishing. They go out, so they're getting that full range of experience. We have a little bit of a chance, so he will they will have a co-op program. So there's usually one young person will come and help with us, which is, sometimes challenging because you're used to things going, but my foreman is really good at working. So I got some young people that come. So that's the good news. I think that's the good news. The challenge, I think you've heard, a number of things trying to get the young folks to see this is a viable thing, because it truly is. We've got 4 million acres of forest land in this state. we're cutting less than one half of what that forest grows. And there's a huge need for it. Now, trying to connect those dots is going to be the challenge and opportunity going ahead. I think we need, some more mills, at least my size. It'd be nice to go bigger. That's going to be a challenge. One of the, you're talking, if you really want to have a business, it's going to kill 100 million. That's some serious, and so they're going to need, that's a big egg to crack, I think. The good news is, I think there's sites, I look at my good friend Bill and there are places that may have those opportunities. It's right now, it's hard to figure out. I wished I had 3 sons all lined up. Maybe you've got a nephew or a niece that wants to come check out the Rutland area. I'm 67. My father's 89, almost. He's driving. God bless his soul. And, that's the next challenge that I see. I think we've got a good model. We do, in the scheme of things, scale wise, we do like a tractor trailer load of some kind of wood in a day. And so, we're in that. And it's challenging right now. I got to tell you.
What species are you sawing?
So we do both hardwood and softwood. Our main appetite is hard maple, and then white pine. Those two are our 2 biggest species. And then we have the ash, the oaks, and the others, and then we have hemlock.
Where is your product going?
So most of the softwoods, the pine. So the pine is a much more commercial species, can go quite a bit around the Northeast. Some of it used to go to Canada. That's all up in the air right now. I'm not shipping anything to Canada, which is the only thing I got to step back and say is railroad ties still can go. It's in the same category as logs. Lumbers is, and that's kind of throwing a monkey wrench immediately at us. So that's an issue. The softwoods, just to give you a little of that, so about 50-50 of our production is hardwood softwood. And most of that softwood stays within 100 miles. So it's either I'm selling it to other softwood vendors. We do a retail business as well, and then we deliver. So we've got a lot of balls in the air, but it seems to work. I think one of the challenges that, the folks behind me have definitely said, we've got a couple of challenges. We do need to have our Act 250 process sized right for us, because I think we're very much similar to the ag community, the farming community, that we're working with the land, and the people we supply or work with, those are the farmers of the woods. So there's a definitely need there. The other area that's got a lot to do with demographics, and I think it's good for you folks to know up here that we really need the public lands that are part of the state, whether it's federal or state. They need to be a part of the wood basket. And with climate change, I get it. There's a real issue with us, making more carbon, sequestering carbon, but to, save us by putting public lands in the carbon sequestration only is basically unsustainable and moving us in the opposite direction. Those trees are growing here. We need that wood. It's the wood that we use. We all use wood, and it's going to come from somewhere.
Where is your wood coming from?
Pretty much Rutland, Addison, Bennington counties, a little bit from Windsor. So pretty much a 50-mile radius. And then we do deal with, the other interesting thing in the mill business is that the local mills actually collaborate a little bit. So I will buy lumber from other logs. I will buy roundwood and then we will trade back and forth. 50 years ago, you didn't do that. It was a little more old school. Now it's adapted. So getting back to the public lands, I think it's important. We have a really strong, have had a lot of strong push that the state should do less to zero, which I think is a big mistake. I think that's taking out a vital part. That one of the reasons you can about public lands is when the economy goes through its cycles like it does, private lands, they come and they go. You can't, you know, and I get that. I own our family. We have a little over 1,100 acres that we have, you know, we pay taxes on. And if the lumber business, I'm going to be a little less, you know, wanting to cut when the market is down, but the public lands have a different window. And I think that's something that's very important to consider along with supplying wood that is vital. So I can't think of anything else I need to say, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks very much.
I'm glad you guys gave us a little time.
Oh, yeah, no, we're glad to have you.
Next.
We got the music chair.
Barrel now, yes, next. I'm Mike Green, a consulting forester up north, LaMoille County. I've been in the forestry business for a long time. I worked for the state for 30 years, Forest and Parks Department. I worked as a county forester. I worked on state lands, Mount Mansfield mostly. I worked at Fish and Wildlife lands as a wildlife forester. And also municipal forest. I work with town and village lands. So now I'm a consulting forester. We deal with a lot of landowners. And the landowners, growing timber is not one of the main reasons people own land. They own land for probably maybe just the scenery. They own land for wildlife. They own land for recreation. And all these, there's other reasons. And but the only way you can do anything with recreation or wildlife is to do timber harvesting on the land. And otherwise you've got to pay somebody to do something. If you want trails on your property, you'd have to pay someone to come in and build the trails for you. But you have a logging operation, then we include that as part of the timber sale. And I've got a client, we built, I don't know how many miles of trail for him. He's got a side-by-side. He's got a lot of money. And so we're done with the job. We went up there and we built a lot of trails for him. That was part of it. And he was really happy with it. And plus he did a nice job. Nice job. We'll get more chairs. When I worked with the state, we worked out of Barry in the Central Vermont district. And then I've been retired a long time. I got it early out when Governor Dean was here. So there were 8 people working on state land when I was there. We were doing a lot of timber sales, all sorts of things. Now it's 2. So we did a lot of cutting on it, and I don't know what's going on now, but I don't think they're doing the cutting that they should be doing. That's my idea. Another thing is land use, current use program, excellent program. I was gone out of here for 17 years, and when I came back, I thought that program would have been gone, but it's stayed on, and it's a wonderful program. It's created a lot of work for our consulting foresters and for the ones that are in here, and we hope to keep that going. I just did a new one on Monday. Monday was the best day we've had this year. But the sun was out, it was 50 degrees. I'm glad I did it because the next day it snowed up north and
snowed yesterday morning and it snowed this morning and it's scraped my windshield this morning. And, the big problem I have is no more loggers. Nobody wants to get in logging business. And the people we have working are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. And the kids, nobody wants to work with. They can't find help. And another one was my one logger that's working for me. He's in his 60s now. He couldn't find a log truck recently. So truck his logs. He had to go all the way to Essex Junction to get Coda. That's a public deal to come up and truck his logs. I don't know what happened. Somebody retired, his favorite guy retired in his 70s, trucking logs, and that's a real problem for us. We've got a lot of timber that could be cut, and it's kind of sad. I say the young kids don't want to get in. Hopefully, some of these programs in some of the schools will bring some of them in, but I don't know. It's pretty depressing. I had one log operation this winter, and that was it. I didn't do too much anyway. Snow was too deep. I don't snowshoe. I think I'm the oldest that's acting in Celtic Forest. I'm 83, still going. Walking in the woods is your best exercise. That's my doctor tells us people. Get off the trail. Get in the woods, get on an even ground, step over logs, push brush out of the way. So I'm still going. I worked about noon and then I about had it. That's about it.
Or what time do you start?
Well, probably 11. I said 8 and 9. More of a funny person.
Yeah. Very much too. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a good example of forestry. Is I did a sale in mid-70s. There was a water light department in Boston. It was 70 to 25 acres or something. And we did a sale and we cut off 200,000 board feet. They had a little sale in the 90s, and I went back a couple of years ago. I bet it's time to go back in there again. I walked into that forest. I was lost because I couldn't remember what it was. I know I was in the boundaries, but I was walking through. But all this timber coming. We did another sale, just ended last year, pulling it up 200,000 board feet out. My logger cut a white pine that big. I went back 50 years, was that big. So forests do grow, and most times nobody lives long enough to go in the second cut. You know, it's going to be 20, 30 years between cuts. And I was amazed. So it does work. I'm living proof. But so, any questions?
No. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's next?
Committee, thank you very much for letting me speak a bit. Evan Delolio, I'm the owner of Synergy Bioproducts. I'm a Flatlander from Massachusetts, but I've established our company here for the last 3 years in Vermont, and we're developing a facility in Linden. It's a facility that is a biochar and energy production business, and we're in the permitting process right now here in the state. To give you a little bit of background on what I'm talking about exactly, pyrolysis is a technology that can be used to reform biomass, could be woody, weedy, manure, into valuable products. Biochar or biocarbon has a number of different uses, and it's a commercial business that is starting to take root here in New England. There's a couple of companies in Maine that are actively producing now and are in that industry. And it's used as an agricultural soil amendment. It's used in water filtration, and it's used as a precursor to a number of different industrial products, particularly for companies that are looking for a more sustainable source for carbon. The gas in our case, very similar to an anaerobic digestion process, is going to be utilized as fuel gas. It will be used as a gas for a biogas engine, actually a set of 3 engines to produce electricity. The heat from those engines is totally recovered and is used for processes inside of the plant. In this case, unlike some other types of biomass reformation processes, the material has to be dried. So by recovering that heat off of the generator, you're creating a closed loop system and able to use that in the process. We see this type of operation as playing to a lot of different fields, I think, right now. When you look at the need for sustainable rural jobs and to continue to grow the rural-based economy, that's a critical need. At the same time, I would say that it also continues to stimulate the growth of the using of low-value, low-grade woody residual. That's something I think Senator Ingalls, you mentioned wood insulation earlier. I think that's another good example. I think if you were to look at some of the states around us, again, touching on Maine, there are certainly businesses that are starting to go in that direction. And it helps to diversify the economy a bit. It helps to present some other options that loggers and mills can access to use that low-grade material. And it's also important when you're practicing good forestry. I'm not a forester myself, but I know in talking to many foresters in the industry, it's very challenging to practice good forestry on land, whether it's family forest land, farm woodlots, or even larger land holdings, if you don't have access to a diversity of markets. At the same time, I would say that we're seeking to build a workforce that's going to be technically based. So I think all of the conversation about technical education, vocational education is so important in continuing to promote those types of jobs here in the state and continuing to promote the education of young people into filling those roles. And the same thing goes on the feedstock side for us. If the forest and farm economy isn't strong, we're in trouble because there's not going to be access to that feedstock. And that also plays into the workforce question. Are there loggers, are there foresters, are there truckers who are able to move that material into the plant? I'd also say at the same time that this project plays into what really more in Europe is where you've seen this a little bit more prevalent, what you'd call a carbon negative operation. And that, yes, there's energy being produced, but the energy is in concert with carbon that is being not only stored, but also if used in soil applications or long living products, removed. And it's something called carbon removal. And what you're getting through that process is you're actually able to take that carbon and put it into those products, very similar to what some other folks are talking about in the lumber area, but through a biochar product. So I would also say that I think surety of the process of it, just to give some feedback in terms of what we're experiencing and going through the process in Vermont, timing for permitting is really important, I think, for any business. And I think that plus continuing to provide for a strong workforce and supporting the working lands economy are all things that will help ventures like ours succeed. So I really appreciate your time and happy to answer any questions you all might have.
So Evan and I have been working together. Evan's been working really, really hard on a lot of projects for his project. And I don't know where the negativity comes from within the state as far as the wood products part of it, because it seems to be very, very hard as far as to move projects forward in the state sometimes, where we're either not calling it sustainable or whatever. It just seems to be a big battle as far as classification of what lumber is within this state. And I think it's a larger discussion that needs to be had. It's a larger discussion that needs to be not only had, but needs to be solved. because this battle amongst the environmentalists versus regenerative growth. And as Mike had said about going back in to the forest some years later and having a second cut. Once you cut a forest and you do it sustainably, it doesn't go away. It comes back stronger and goes on. And so certainly discussions to be had. And I commend you for how hard you're working for your project. You've faced a lot of obstacles and hurdles, and I hope it gets easier.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate your guidance very much so.
Yes.
So on permitting, what are your roadblocks? What have you hit? Is it you put in your permit, taking way long to come back? Or they keep changing the goal line? What are some of the issues?
So today, we have a operations and construction permit for air emissions from DEC. We have a stormwater construction general permit from DEC. We're in process right now for a stormwater operations permit, and we have our sewage and water approvals, which in this case, it's just for the employee bathroom, the kitchen area. There's no water in the process. We filed for a section 248 permit last August. We did choose to go the J route. In October, the PUC did decide that it would be best to go through the longer process. We're accepting of that. But the 248 application has been put on hold for the time being while the commission studies two things pertinent to our power purchase agreement under standard offer. And what it relates to is, number one, is the technology appropriate? Because to date, they've only ever permitted anaerobic digesters, facilities that are producing methane to utilize in a generator. So they'd like to take another look at that. Number two, and we went through a number of information sessions of providing testimony and documents that were needed to look at this. And number two, how should the feedstock be classified? And that's something they're looking at very carefully, because they've always looked at it as needing to be under this farm methane section, farm-based. And is timber a crop? Is timber a farm crop? If it's grown on a farm wood lot, is it part of the farm? So I could probably talk about this a little bit longer than we have time for, but it goes through a number of different processes of reviewing that feedstock metric. The thing is we just don't know at this point how long it might take to continue that review. It's something that's ongoing. And then we still would then have to go back into the CPG process, where there would be a public information session, public hearing. There would likely maybe even be some technical hearings to potentially look at the technology again, if outside groups or interested parties might be interested in having that done. So we could be, just to give you a range, we could be in another 6 months of permitting. We could be in another 2 years of permitting. And that is challenging. And I respect that the PUC has to take time to make a decision, but it is challenging only from the perspective of, it's hard to have conversations with your lender, with your investors, with your equipment suppliers, particularly with tariffs and everything else that's up and down right now in terms of that market, to know exactly what your project timeline really looks like.
So do you believe if we tried to put timelines for these permitting process out there would help?
I do. I think that that's an important discussion, and I understand that there's a lot to consider there, but I do think it would help. And I don't think it would be just for our business. I'm sure there's similar things going on maybe in other permitting processes that could help businesses.
As of right now, there is no time. They have no, hey, we'll get back to you in 60 days. It's an open door. We'll get back to you, question mark.
Correct.
I think there's just a lot of discussions that are going on that nobody wants to end. They want to just keep on going. One of them is wood product renewable? Is it a renewable energy? Is it there? And I don't know that that discussion just keeps on going and going and going. And therefore, when you go to permit, it seems to be, okay, well, we got to have this discussion. The discussion keeps on going. It never has an end point, which just seems to be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, the main issue is that, so if you took 5 tons of material and you took this woody fiber, these wood chips, put them into the system, you get a ton of carbon out that you're putting, let's say, back into a farm soil, for example. The argument is the remaining material that's then going through the process of coming out as gas and then being captured and used for energy, renewable because of the fact that there's a carbon emission associated with that. But it's the same process as a digester where it has carbon emissions associated with the generator, so long as you can show that the material is what you would call biogenic carbon, that it's material that otherwise would have emitted into the atmosphere. So in our case, it's particularly true because there's no cutting of timber that's being associated with this operation. We want people growing lumber, pulp, veneer, actual, strong forest products that have that value. And then we can make use of the cull material, the tops, the branches, the stuff that isn't suitable for those types of products. So that's something to stress, because I think there's a certain perception, just generally right now, that people are out there and they're cutting timber to feed, facilities that aren't sawmills, that aren't veneer facilities, that aren't pulp mills. So I think that's an important conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. We have just a few more minutes left. I'm gonna be respectful to the schedule, and you guys have accomplished something I think's only happened twice this year, this committee, and that is got a lot of extra time, which it's very valuable to us as well to learn. So, but it's if we've got somebody who'll either wrap it up or yeah.
President of our association,
Absolutely.
would that be great
Yeah.
to close in?
Come on, sir.
I don't really know what I can say after everybody's just nailed it out of the park.
Come on up.
No excuse.
Come up and have a say anyway.
I can win it.
Yeah.
So I'm Steve Hardy, president of the FPA. I'm owner of Green Mountain Forestry, private consulting firm working in 5 different states. I'm also from a very big mill family here in Vermont, Sir Sossaman Lumber Company. I grew up with the company and since I was a kid. And so I understand what the mills are going through and stuff. And I just left the business 35 years ago to start Green Mountain Forestry. It's an interesting time in the lumber industry now, especially with these tariffs and things. However, this is going to be resolved quite quickly. This is not going to be hangovers for a long time. The other thing is that there are some bright things that are going on in the lumber industry, and right in Rutland County is Mill River Lumber Company has now just been bought over. Are you familiar? Have you heard of any of this, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, Hunter Calthers, who I've known for 30 years at least. I coached in ski racing. I'm also a ski race coach. Well, that's what I'm getting around today. And but that's a good case study that we should really see what's going on, because Hunter is just getting into the lumber industry. He just took over Mill River Lumber Company that sold last October, and he bought it. And he is a young, energetic, sharp businessman, and he's in the construction business, and he's been in the logging end for the past 15 years, maybe 20 years. And he's just a solid guy now. So what he's doing is he wants to take Mill River, doesn't necessarily want to boost their sawmilling capacity so much, but he would also like to put in possibly like a pellet mill or something like that, because that's one of the biggest things we have in Vermont. Selling lumber and logs is not a problem, but we have just a glut of poor quality, low grade wood. And that just drives some people absolutely nuts when they think, what, these low grade trees, they've got a life too. It's ridiculous. And that's why when you're talking about that discussion that never seems to end, is it a renewable thing? I'm 68 years old. I have seen jobs that I've got my family's cut, in multi years, and it's just absolutely amazing. I'm from the Wyndham and Windsor County. We are growing more timber now than we were at any other time, and sanely managed. We've had foresters marking wood down there for 80 years, and it's just absolutely amazing. But coming back to Hunter, so Hunter would like to possibly look into putting in a pellet mill. He wants to be a little diversified. The interesting thing is at Mill River Lumber, they were just drying lumber. And now he wants to make commercial firewood operation, probably, 2,500 cords or more. And, but he'd like to start drying firewood in the kilns. You're drying wood. It's a new category in Act 250. It's like, this really shouldn't be rocket science. The other thing is too, is you think of, look at Rutland County, look at, Rutland plywood that's gone. They're not emitting anything. And, you know, there's gotta be room within this breadbasket or this manufacturing to, say, yeah, we can go right along. And so I'm just very curious. I'm, you know, working with Hunter and talking with him on this, how this is all gonna go, because I have seen a lot of Act 250 issues, especially growing up in a large lumber mill, things like that. So I don't want to drag this on, but I want to just say that there are some opportunities that are coming along, because we hear about older logging. I have several logging crews where the guys are in their 20s and 30s. I've got 5 crews with that. I don't, do I pick up all these young kids and train them? I don't know, but there are people coming in, and we really need to see something going on with, you know, the vocational centers in the state. It's really interesting because I don't see enough kids coming out of there. I should be more involved, but I'm busy trying to keep a forestry business going in some interesting times.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you coming in today. You know, I know some, this might be outside of our purview, but I don't know that it's always going to be that way. I kind of view this as a little bit of a field trip for our committee. We actually got to hear from an industry that needs help and would like some questions answered, and have a lot of answers themselves if they're allowed to grow the business in the way it could be sustainable in the state of Vermont. So you've been very impactful to us, myself, I can tell, and I can, you know, I know my committee well. We appreciate you coming in and sharing what you have.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
me.
Right, right.
Yes. Linda, just go out.
All right.
Thank you.